We're looking at this image here, which is from the HiRISE camera on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and it's called Stepping It Up in Arabia Terra. Now, some credit should go to one of my members of Mars Magazine on Facebook here, because he's pointed out in this region, this is a very recent image from the MRO. It was only uploaded to the website a few days ago, and I always keep an eye on those. And this is an amazing image, it really is. And Chokri Yaich here has pointed out that some of these are rather strange and seem to look like pyramids. Okay, so credit to Chokri for this, or at least for drawing my attention to some of these things, because I found a whole bunch of other things in this image that he didn't point out, but he did point out some of these measurements here. I thought that's interesting, so I checked it out, and I found a load of other strange measurements going on here and interesting features, which I'm going to show you now. Now, what I did, I uploaded it to my Gigapan site here. There will be a link below for this, and if you want to get the original image, come up to the top of the information here and click on that Arizona link there, and that will take you to this page here. Okay, where it says, I'm not going to read all this, but basically it says, the process that formed these sedimentary rocks is not yet well understood. They could have formed from sand or volcanic ash that was blown into the crater, or in water if the crater hosted a lake, and I think it did. I think this is a lot of this is water erosion here, because we have lots of buttes which are quite similar to the butte structures you see at the base of Mount Sharp. It's very similar indeed. There's a lot of similarities here. The dunes are different. We have lots of complex features on the ground, lots of complex geology going on, and signs of extensive erosion. I would say water erosion mainly, but also wind erosion and other processes going on as well. What's really cool about this is you've got all these mounds here. I'm going to zoom in here. Now this is the bit that Chokri was pointing out here, I think. Now a lot of these look like they've got square structures on them, like pyramids, like this one. And of course, these are probably many millions of years old, and they got sand drifted up all around them. So if you were to have a square pyramid that had been buried or semi-buried for possibly millions of years, then you would have a sort of rounded kind of mound form around it, where the sand had formed up against it. Okay, so I do wonder whether some of these are actually built structures, because we've got a square one here. This is a nice kind of rectangular or square one, just here. It's kind of rectangular. And a lot of them are rectangular, but most of them are kind of random shapes, teardrops, polygons, and other shapes. Some are round, but most of them are kind of random, but some of them are not. And what I've done is I've marked some of them up here. There's a perfectly straight one here, which is very strange, just here. A long rectangular structure, just here. Look at that. That is almost perfect. Let's measure that. It's over 20 meters. It's about 30 meters, I would say. Yeah, about 30. Absolutely ruler straight. I will take clips of these and put them in at the end as well, and I'll rotate them slightly to show how straight some of these are. I mean, that one is the best one of that type. It's got a perfectly straight structure. So I think a lot of these are natural, but I think they were modified and built on and in between by the Martians, possibly millions of years ago. I don't know how long ago, but judging by the erosion here and by the amount of sand that's drifted up against all these things, these could be many thousands or many millions of years old, I would say. It's impossible to say exactly. Now, just here, not only do we have an oval kind of group here, which is interesting, and some of these have got strange features on them, on top of them. If you look at them closely, some of these are really weird. They've got weird kind of structures on top, okay, which are this one's rectangular. There's a little rectangular one there. right? There's a rectangular one here, which seems to have, that is a weird one. Now, every time I look at this, I'm finding more and more of these with rectangular structures on. And this one's got some weird internal detail in it, which says to me that this is an artificial structure. In other words, we got an eroded rectangle with rectangles inside it, which probably means that is a building. Highly probable, I would say. Now, over here, I've marked these. We've got 4 in a row. We've got 1, 2, 3, and 4, and another one, number 5 here, and these are exactly equidistant. In other words, the distance between each peak of these is exactly the same. There's another one offset here, another one here, another one here, but they're not the same distance. But these 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the L shape are, not only are they all approximately the same size with varying levels of erosion, but they're the same distance apart. Now, what I did in here is I've taken a clip of that area and I've rotated it so that these are in a straight line, okay? And they are almost exactly, I would say, in a perfect straight line when you line them up at the bottom of the page there. This one's slightly above, but they are eroded, so part of the structure may have collapsed on this. We go in closer. The limit of that may have come to there, so some of this may have collapsed. And this one here seems a little bit bigger, but seems to have more sand around it. So they've got varying levels of sand up against them as well. But these are approximately the same size, these 5, and there's exactly the same distance apart. Okay. So what you need to do to measure, what I do is I use the selection tool from the center of one like that to the center of the other like that, and then just move it along and see if that fits exactly, and it does. You've got one there and then another one here, and this one is also the same distance. Okay, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a formation exactly the same distance apart and all approximately the same size. Now that says to me that these are not natural, and I will take some clips and get some close-ups of these for you in a minute and put them in at the end of the video. Okay, so that was interesting. Now that to me says intelligent structures. Now if you were to get, say, a load of golf balls, and say you had a sand pit, right? Say you had a sand pit that was like, say 10 foot square or something like that, and say you had 20 golf balls, and you had them in a bucket, and then you just chucked them up in the air, and then they all fell in this sand pit, right? Now, you could do it once, and you would find 2 or 3 that were in the group. You could do it twice, 3 times. You could do it 10 times, right? And you could do it 100 times, and you would not get 5 balls to land in a sandpit perfectly the same distance apart. Okay, so that says to me that these are artificial, because when it comes to randomness and Mother Nature, things do not tend to happen with precise distance like that, unless they've either been modified or they are artificial. Okay. So I'm pretty sure these are artificial. Like I said, with golf balls, you could do it the same. You could do it with any ball, or in a sand pit, or with rocks, all approximately the same size. You could just throw them in randomly. You'd have to throw them up in the air and let them land, and you would have to do this hundreds of times to get them to create a formation like this. Mathematically, the chances of these being natural, completely natural, are very, very slim indeed, I would say. So that was interesting. Now, there are some other interesting features in here. I'm not going to go through all of this now, because if you're interested in this, you can click on the links below in the description. You can come to this page. You can look at it on your mobile phone as well. This will load up quite well. And there's some crazy stuff here. And some of them are rectangular, like this one here. This one is almost perfectly rectangular here. This is probably artificial. So what I think some of these are, I think a lot of these are natural buttes, but I think, like in Gale Crater, the ones at the base of Mount Sharp, I think they've been modified, they've been built on and built into, and had their shapes modified by people on the ground that were probably living in these, much like bunkers, okay? Because they do have a bunker mentality on Mars. As I've shown many times before, there are loads of sort of bunker type structures on Mount Sharp and around Mount Sharp, at the base of Mount Sharp, and they're in between a lot of these buttes that we have in the lake bed there, and they are quite similar in shape to some of these, but that perfectly straight one was the best one, and there's absolutely no way, in my opinion, that is a completely natural structure. That looks artificial. So that's a building, and it's buried in sand, and when you start looking at these closely, you will see a lot of them are square and rectangular or straight, and they have pyramidal shapes on these little so-called buttes or whatever you want to call them. So there's loads of them. There's a rectangular one here as well. They're all over the place. There's dozens of them, but most of them I think are natural and are natural shapes, but they are really quite stunning, some of them over here to the left. We've got some amazing ones here, and you can see those layers which are perfect, these step layers going up. Now it's almost as if what we have here is like a salt mine, and some kind of quarrying going on here, because the layering on these is so perfect. When you look at them, they are absolutely stunning to look at. This image has been enhanced slightly. It says up here, I added 30% brightness and contrast because it was a little bit dark. They often are. The light conditions on Mars aren't brilliant, so you often have to brighten things up a bit because it's further away from the sun, so you don't get quite the level of brightness on the surface, as I've said many times before. But I'm not going to go through all of these now because I could be here all day. There are so many weird little so-called buttes here, and most of them are natural, but there's loads of weird stuff going on the ground, and some of them are square, some of them are rectangular, and some of them are like straight, long rectangles, like I showed you. But up here we have also, in the ground, what looks like terracing or something going on the ground here, where we have these long lines, almost like a salt mine kind of area here. I'll try not to move around too much. This is weird. We got these long lines and ridges. Could this be irrigation, perhaps? Could these be terraces? I have shown terraces on the lower slopes of Mount Sharp in Gale Crater, which are similar to this, and that they often form in lines or patterns that look a bit like paddy fields, okay? So that is possible that these are some kind of either irrigation channels or terracing with irrigation as well. It is possible, okay? Because I have shown that before. These things do exist on Mars, and I've shown many examples of them in recent videos. And if you go back through some of my recent videos, there are some very similar structures to this as well in this video here, called Mars Fortress City. Now this is in the Atlantis Chaos region, which is a different part of Mars to where we are today. But there are these big structures in here, like we have on the cover here, which are rectangular with walls around them, and they're surrounded by smaller buried rectangular structures in the ground as well. So there's like buried city and town areas here, which are very ancient and eroded, and they look like they've been attacked from above, and there's loads of craters in the area that may have been formed by shells and not by actual meteors or whatever, okay? And there's another video I did a while back as well, I think this one here, where there are similar structures on the ground that look like villages and towns, which are heavily eroded. Some of them are square like this one, but basically I've already established in previous videos recently that there were cities and towns on the ground, and you can see them in some areas in a poor state of repair. In other words, they are half buried and ruined, and they have craters in between them which look like shell craters, as if they've been attacked from above. Okay, so it may be evidence of warfare on the surface here that I've got in some of these videos that I've done recently, especially this one here. The village on this one has got a huge crater right on the edge of it, as if it was attacked from above. And in this one here also, there's lots of craters near the city areas and town areas, as if they've been attacked from above. And I'm not talking about nuclear weapons here. I'm talking about conventional type shells that have been dropped, okay, or fired, or perhaps even missiles, okay. And I have shown in previous videos things that look like missiles as well. Now, if you go back through some of my previous videos, like this one here, Mars cocoon structures, and Mars spiders and alien alcohol, and in fact, any of these recent videos, you'll see that I've been showing a lot of dunes recently. I've been doing a lot of dune research, and basically what I've found out is that NASA don't quite understand some of the dunes on Mars. We've always assumed they did, but they don't. They've actually said in some of their articles that they don't fully understand how some of these dunes are formed. Why is that? Because I think some of them, like we have here today, are not necessarily just dunes. As I have shown before, some of these, most of them are dunes, but some of them have got branches that come off them. These are what they call millipede dunes. So you have long dune structures with multiple limbs coming off, okay? That's why they call them millipedes, because they look a bit like large millipedes crawling along the surface. But I think that a lot of these could well be, and I have shown some, that have branches coming off them that either go into the ground or come out of the ground. And they're not actually dunes, some of them. I'm not sure about these because we don't really have enough detail here to get in close enough to find out one way or the other. There are loads of them, and they are quite stunning, these millipede dunes. There's some amazing examples of them down here. Most of these look normal. In other words, they look like actual dunes. But in some of the videos I've shown before, as I said, I've shown some of these where they go into the ground, and some of them go over each and under each other, like in my recent Mars cocoon video, this one here. You've got intertwining so-called millipede dunes that go over and under each other and form like a woven structure, okay? So I do think that some of these, not necessarily these per se, but some of them that we see on the surface are actually crawling vines, or possibly a type of giant fungal growth like slime mold, okay? They grow in very similar patterns to mold and are very old indeed, and they have these branches coming off them and grow in an organic way along the ground and probably move along the ground. They would stay in one area, and as the climate changes through the year, they would die off and then kind of they'd die off at one end and move along. I actually think some of them are actually moving, some of these dunes here. Now, I'm not saying these are necessarily vines here, but some of the ones that I've shown before are. These are probably normal dunes, but we can't really tell exactly, but they are really interesting, and they form lovely patterns in the ground like we have here when you have multiple ones together. And there's loads of these on Mars, but I do think, and I have shown, that some of them have branches going into the ground and coming out of the ground, like roots, okay? The main ones of interest really were this row here, and the straight and rectangular ones here. We've got the straight one here, we've got a rectangular one up here, and we've got a row of 4 with an offset one there. So we've got a row of, well, a group of 5. There's an oval group here which may or may not be a natural formation, but some of them do look like kind of pyramids, or they've got square structures on top of them, as I've shown before. Okay, so I really do recommend you get this hover zoom magnifying glass, because it will make your life a lot easier, and it's actually really handy to have anyway on your browser. But just check out how stunning some of these look. I mean, these down here are quite amazing, and it does almost look like these were terraced rather than naturally formed. I think they were naturally formed initially, but I think they were modified later, perhaps. And there may have been crops growing on these terraces, like we have on Mount Sharp in Gale Crater, where I've shown multiple terraces there with buildings nearby. Now, why would you need to have terracing like this unless you were growing stuff, okay? And a lot of this does look like paddy fields. This was probably partially flooded until quite recently, and at one point would have been a huge lake. And you can see where the water would have been here. We'd have had loads of little lakes and rivers, all kind of joined up here. And as I've said before, I think a lot of these structures were built like citadels, or they modified natural structures into citadel-like armoured structures to protect themselves from dangerous, not only dangerous other people, possible other tribes or whatever, but also very dangerous animals like very large raptors and stuff like that, dinosaurs. Because I do think that the dinosaurs on Mars coexisted with the people on Mars, because I found in the same area skulls together where you have humanoid skulls, and literally a few feet away there are large dinosaur and lizard skulls in the area as well, and some of them are very large, they're 3 or 4 feet long. So there were raptors on Mars, and they were running around like T-Rexes, and were probably eating people. So it would make sense if you lived in a lake area which was partially flooded a lot of the time. You'd have these lots of little islands. You could live on one of these little islands here. I mean, they're not that big, some of them, but you could have like a house on there, and you could have a little boat, and you could travel between the little possible little islands and see your friends and families. And you'd also be protected from these dangerous animals if you lived in an area like this, like a lake area. You could have these little citadel structures and protect yourself not only from invaders, but from dangerous animals, okay? So clips coming up in a minute. Thanks for watching, everybody. Links below, as usual. I will see you soon.